Hi, and welcome to this month's Vaadin webinar. This time around, we'll be talking about Vaadin's roadmap for 2021. So I'm super excited to just share with you all the cool stuff that we have planned with me today. I've got two of the product owners over here at Vaadin. So a repeat guest, Jansson, welcome.
Thank you.
And Matti Tahvonen, long-time Vaadiner. Rumor has it he's a excellent orienteer, so good with a map. So we hope you'll be sharing some of your map reading skills and insights today.
Yeah, about roadmap this time, yeah.
Well, I mean, a map's a map.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, so the format we have today is that I'll hand it over to Jansson Matti in just a moment, and they'll go through the roadmap and kind of the big picture of what we're aiming to get done this year. And then we've got some times set aside at the end where we want to answer your questions. So be sure to ask your questions in the chat, and I'll be monitoring all those questions and asking all the difficult questions from Jens and Matti at the end.
All right.
So with that, I will hand it over to Jens. I think you are going to kick us off here.
Yeah, I will. So just to give an overview of what we're going to talk about today, we have 4 central topics that we would like to go. First, we would like to show what are the big vision, what is the direction that Vaadin is going towards at this time. Then we would also want to talk a little bit about how we do road mapping and what it means to do road mapping at Vaadin. Then as the third section, we're going to go through what kind of projects we have ongoing now and what kind of projects we are planning to do this year, roughly. And finally, we will have a question and answer section where you can ask all your questions, and me and Matti will try to answer them for you. But all right, let's start with the big picture first. And what are the big trends that where we are trying to go right now? So summarizing the big thing about Vaadin into one word, more or less, is productivity. We have always been very keen on getting the most productivity out of developers and being able, for example, with just a few lines of Java code, to be able to build a web application without having to care about the details. So you get the simplicity, you get the UX, and you can use the whole Java ecosystem in your benefits for it, and build modern web applications with it. One of our internal guidelines on what we should try to build is this consumer grade UX on a business budget. A business budget might sound a little bit misleading, but let me split out the 2 parts of this. Consumer grade UX. Usually, if you have front-facing applications to consumers, it is very important that you have everything just right. And we want to provide the same possibilities with the Vaadin framework. But we want to do that on a business budget. And here we don't mean that we will have a big budget to spend, but more like usually in businesses, you have to decide where to put your money so that you would get the most out of the budget that you put into the project, but still get that great user experience out of it.
And usually in business applications, the ones that are typically built with Vaadin, there are like dozens or hundreds of screens, and you just don't have that money in any company that you can fine-tune each and every of those UIs so much as you have in those consumer applications.
Exactly. So we want to provide the building blocks there.
Yeah, the productivity is very important for that kind of applications.
Yeah. And since Vaadin 10, jumping from Vaadin 8 to 10, we did we revamped a lot of the Vaadin framework with Vaadin 10. We switched over to web components, for example, and renewed our full component set. And we have been working hard to find all the gaps with this building a new set and a new framework behind. And I think it has become very good along the years there, and just getting everything in place. And we're going to keep on doing that, finding those gaps that we might have and making productivity even better. So that's a big thing that we keep on focusing this year still. Additionally, we are also looking in to be able to not only build with Java your UIs, but you can also choose to build with TypeScript. You can do either or you can do even both in your applications. The choice is yours, which ones you want to use. In some teams, you might have a lot of front-end developers that you can bring easier into the project if they can also do some of the UIs with TypeScript or the full UI layer TypeScript. But also this enables one other very interesting detail in Vaadin applications, because traditional Vaadin applications has always been server side. Everything is running on the server, and you are just, as an end user, the browser just says like to the server that user click this button, and the server decides what to do then. But with enabling also TypeScript views there, we can build something that runs fully in the browser. So for example, in your full flow application, you can build one screen with TypeScript and enable offline views in your application as well. And this is an area we have been working on a lot, and trying to get that on the side of the flow framework to give you options on how to build your applications. And I said the flow and Fusion lives side by side. You can use the same Java backend for both. In Fusion, we also generate like endpoints, which you can call from the TypeScript views directly. So you can leverage the same Java backend in the same way. And then we have the other parts. We have the tooling, and we have our design system, which includes components and a team. And then we also have a project called Collaboration Engine, which is quite new, going on right now. To highlight some other main area of focus that we have right now, the component set, as I said, we renewed it in Vaadin 10, built from scratch, and we have been continuing making it better and better. It will be our focus. Being able to give you the building blocks will still be our focus in the future as well. And the components is part of our design system. We want to build out the design system as well. What goes into a design system is the components, it's the teams, and it's as well documentation and best practices on how to use this, so that you get a coherent look and feel in your applications. We have recently wrapped up our own Vaadin design system that you can use in your application, but we are also providing tools that you can build your own company's design system, so that you can share a common look if you have, for example, multiple applications being developed at one time.
We actually have Rolf, the product owner for the design system, is going to join us for another webinar in 3 weeks. I think, to kind of do a really deep dive into what all of this means in practice, and how you can kind of use all of these new features to build something that looks and feels the way your app should look and feel like.
Yeah. And then another trend that we are seeing, a lot of applications are going more and more collaborative, that you can see other users using the application at the same time. Say, for example, Google Docs or Sheets, where you can see what the cursor of other people and what they're editing, or Figma in the design space, where you see the cursor of people and you can drag things along. We believe that this is a big trend going forward in all kinds of business applications, and we want to build that kind of capabilities into Vaadin applications as well. Then the final trend I was speaking of, we believe strongly that the best way to get the best experience is to enable you to have a single code base for all your devices, so that you don't have to build separate applications, for one for your desktop users, one for iPhone, and a third for Android. But having that one one application and serve it to mobile users as well. And you have probably seen already progressive web application features in Vaadin.
Yeah, and it's also about the components. So components that we have in the current Vaadin are very well optimized for all kinds of devices, not just for desktop devices that were the traditional target, but also for mobile applications.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the main topics that we are talking about here. I'm thinking what the things that we want to build out, and we have figured out some projects about it. But before we go through the list of what are the things we are actually building for this, let's talk a little bit about our roadmap in between.
And what is roadmap at Vaadin and how we work on it. So roadmap is basically something that we as product owners, Jens and I and a couple of other of our colleagues in our products team is basically working on every day. It's our communication tool and planning tool. We get dozens of questions, both from inside the company and outside the company, that when is this feature ready, and are you planning to do something like this? And roadmap is basically thing to plan and communicate those things and those decisions that we make on our investments. One thing about the roadmap that I would like to mention, that it's not a promise ever. So it's always our best guess of the future. And we have been discussing a lot lately that how long should we guess our future and how good, like strong promises should we make, but it always fails. So estimates in software industry, and especially this kind of software industry that we are doing. So we are building software tooling for other software. That's very difficult to estimate, and there is always surprises with the browsers and new technology. So it's very hard to say and promise that when is certain feature ready.
And it's more than just surprises in what we are planning to do. We also try to react all the time to feedback coming in. So if we, for example, have built something and then somebody says that, hey, this is very cool, but we would like to have this one feature as well to really make use of what you have recently built, then we might consider prioritizing getting that one extra thing so that the previous feature shines instead of moving on to build the next thing. So we are always looking what is the most important thing right now and adjusting the roadmap accordingly.
Yeah, and this is a company after all, Vaadin, where we are working. It's a company that pays our salaries, so we need to react on bigger customer requests, for example. So if we have a big customer who wants to sponsor a feature, we will for sure change our plans for that. So where do we have that roadmap? We have that on our website, actually. So if you go to vaadin.com/roadmap, you will see this kind of page. And here we have kind of our public promises that we have. I'm pretty sure that everybody on the webinar has kind of seen this, and you can go here basically whenever you have. It has kind of listed the upcoming releases and what we have planned to include in those. It doesn't give you too much details about that. So sometimes it's actually better to go to GitHub. So if you go to Vaadin in GitHub, you will basically see everything that we are doing, almost everything that we are doing. So most of the projects that we are working on are open source. So you can go, for example, to Flow project, where you see actually both of our frameworks, and you can see issues that we are working on. Or then if you go to Vaadin team and then pick some projects here, you can actually see the flow streams ongoing feature, for example. You can basically see what we are working on this week. So you can get to that low level details and also dive into individual tickets. And then in addition to these, we also have like internal tools. So I'm gonna flash you quickly a tool that we have been using lately for the past 1 or 2 years. So it's called ClickUp, and we have like a lot of like detailed issues about our things that we have been planning and things that are in implementation. We have a bit more information here. So this is mostly for our internal planning. Somebody actually on the questions asked about Quarkus support. Yes, we have planned for it, but it's not very detailed. And later on, when we get more information from our customers, we will be shaping that and probably moving that later on into a GitHub issue and then start working on it later on. But it's not on the committed state or in development state. And actually, just this week we discussed about moving basically everything to GitHub-based workflow. So it might be that in the future you can actually see more of these kind of raw ideas that we have and what we are using, because most of that, in most of our project, everything is open source and very open anyways, and we are discussing with the customers. So having kind of a GitHub-based planning tool might be the choice of the future for us. So maybe we might actually ditch this internal planning tool altogether and go all GitHub. And so how can you as a Vaadin user affect the roadmap? So and also affect what we are doing. One thing to note that most of what we are doing is not on the roadmap. So we don't put on the roadmap like smaller issues, like small features or bugs, and we don't put on our roadmap our research project. So if we are looking into, for example, how much work would it take for us to make this Quarkus integration, we will make a spike on it. That's not on our roadmap. And if we are improving our tests, that's not on the roadmap. But this is most of what we are doing. Then the actual implementation phase is usually smaller, and yeah, this is something that people often don't see, that how much time goes into this maintenance rather than actually like developing new things that are in our stable product. I would also like to have more and more on the roadmap as everybody else, but it's just not possible.
Yeah, but at the same time, there's a lot of value in what we're kind of, the more we're able to really listen to what all of you in the community are saying to us on like what are some APIs that could be more convenient. Are there missing small things that kind of make working with Vaadin more difficult than it needs to be, or what could we add that would make it even better? So we want to also make sure that we have enough space reserved for reacting to that kind of work and not fill the entire pipeline with just new features, because we want to make sure that what we put out there is really built for you who are using it.
Yeah, and from time to time we are concentrating more on this maintenance side of things than developing something new. And I would say that this exact moment is one of those. So we have been, for the past year or two, we have been actually focusing mostly on adding smaller features and integrations to Vaadin 14. And when we came out with the Vaadin 10 release, that we can say it aloud now, it was basically a mistake. We did it way early. We rewrote basically all the components and all the integrations, and they were not ready. People were, or like many of our existing customers were not happy. That it was not as stable as they had felt in the past, and now we have been working a lot to make it better and or at least as good and much better than it was before. And we are still going to continue a lot on that side. So adding new features, fixing bugs, and all that, that's very, very important job. And it's just very hard to put on the roadmap that we are making Vaadin faster or we are killing bugs. it's not as sexy as saying like, yeah, we want to have this new Quarkus support or something else. But it's very important job. But there are also like features that you would like to get on the roadmap, like bigger features. Discuss with us. So give us feedback on, well, basically any way you want. So we have forums on our website how you can submit us some feedback. GitHub is very natural place to start discussions on new features. You can create new ticket or issue for enhancement and discuss with the development team. And you can contact any of our product owners directly, or you can even contribute or sponsor features. So if you're a customer, you can talk to your sales contact at Vaadin that can we get this feature into some release in the future, and we can probably make it happen if we investigate it a bit. And these are all ways how you can affect our roadmap, and I hope that you will do that, because otherwise we are mostly like focusing on our best guesses instead of like real input from the field. Releases, yeah. Releases is basically, it's not the roadmap. We are building features all the time and then shipping when they are basically ready. So we are nowadays doing new major release on every quarter. So there is plenty of releases when we can push out the value. And then there are LTS releases. So not all of these major releases that we do nowadays, not all of those are supported for a long time. So if you take, for example, the current major version Vaadin 19, it won't be supported for too long. It's basically just 3 months left that you have support for it. Then you need to be prepared to upgrade to Vaadin 20. So most of our users are and should be on these LTS releases. And for those, we have a lot of support. And yeah, in addition to this free support that we provide 5 years, which is quite a lot already, we of course offer extended support. So a lot of our business is based on supporting these kind of end of life framework versions. So for example, Vaadin 7 is still used in many business applications, and it's just fine. We have been delivering new fixes for those. We have been delivering security fixes, some incompatibilities with the browsers, and so on. So if something breaks your existing Vaadin application that is running on Vaadin 7, you still have our back on it. So if I would say that most Vaadin applications shouldn't upgrade to the next LTS eagerly, but only when they are doing some kind of another bigger investment into their application. Don't just go upgrading if it's only about that I want to be on the latest version. It's probably cheaper for you to pay for the extended support, keep with the minor like maintenance releases, and that's all. So these are the currently supported LTS releases, and then there is the next one, and that's always a question that we get quite often. So actually we decided to discuss about the next LTS before somebody asked that online, that when is the next LTS. Yeah, this is also a plan. So the plan is that we will do it this year. So Vaadin 22 should be the next LTS currently, and there are a lot of new features in it. So there is, for example, one new framework in it. So in addition to Flow, the pure Java framework that most of you know, we now have another framework. And I think those interested have been seeing some webinars by Markus, and who did you talk with? Was it Victor?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Can't remember all the webinars I do anymore.
Yeah. So with Fusion, you can basically write the UI code in TypeScript, and that's now executed in the browser side. So that is an additional framework that you can use for totally different kind of use cases, or sometimes in the same use cases, but for different people. So if you have like new front-end developers who don't know anything about Java, but you can use them to build your UIs, then this approach probably works much better for your application.
Yeah.
Then we have been doing a lot of upgrades for our dependencies. For example, the Polymer will be replaced by Lit. The Polymer will be still supported alongside, but basically there is no dependencies on the framework level, and the most important components will be upgraded also to Lit. And there will be improved components. That there is a lot of accessibility changes in the queue now, and they are somewhat breaking changes, so we cannot push those to minor versions. So we have to wait for the next LTS for those things. Then we have Gradle support, which will be out in Vaadin 20, yeah,
I think it's 20.
Yeah, I'm also. What is the current? Is it 19 or
19 is correct.
Yeah,
19 is out. 20
yeah,
is
yeah. So many versions these days that even I cannot keep up with those. And OSGI support, we actually had originally a plan to backport that to Vaadin 14 series, but finally it turned out that the branches that we have are so diverted these days. So if you take the current master and our 14 branch, backporting the current OSGI support that we have to Vaadin 14 series would be so expensive that we actually decided let's not do the backport and let's just push it for the next LTS. So it's not only to ship new features, these LTSs. It's not only for you that you can get a new long supported version. It's also for us. So we are a bit selfish here as well. It makes us much faster actually to develop new features when we can ditch some of the legacy. So one important in the next LTS that we will not be supporting IE11 anymore in any form. So a lot of our developers in our design system team, the team that is taking care of the components, they will be super happy that there is no IE11 support anymore, because it's slow, it's working in different ways than other modern browsers. So that will help us to move much faster in the future and ship more features.
Yeah, I mean, in practical terms, sometimes you could spend even like half of your time just taking something that already works for every other browser and then try to get that to work on IE11. So in these cases, that essentially means you could build a whole nother component in the same time you just try to get this one component to work in IE11. And unfortunately, with kind of recent changes, we're seeing IE11 starting to kind of taper down even in business use. Yeah.
Actually, I could go one slide back here. We were, like one thing in the next LTS that is not listed here that just came out in my mind that we should talk about is the backwards compatibility. If you look at these releases here, there were quite significant changes, especially with Vaadin 8 and Vaadin 10. But then Vaadin 10 to Vaadin 14, that was pretty easy upgrade, and it will be pretty easy upgrade also for Vaadin 22 from Vaadin 14. So if you are planning to migrate from Vaadin 14 to Vaadin 22 at some point in the future, that will be much more easier for you than for example, Vaadin 8 to Vaadin 14 migration. Also, if you are at Vaadin 8 or Vaadin 7, and then you are now planning to make a bigger migration for your application, you can then start it already and do it to Vaadin 14, like today. The effort will be basically almost the same as to go directly to Vaadin 22. So if you start the migration project to Vaadin 14 today, and you want to be in Vaadin 22 next year, the effort will not go wasted. So there is only like very tiny changes that are there, and also some of the features that let's just say that that it's much more easier to go to the next LTS than it was from Vaadin 8 to Vaadin 10.
Indeed. From 10 to 14, we had, for example, we switched from Bower to NPM, but there also we offered a compatibility mode from 10 to 14 that you could stick to Bower mode in 14 as well, and then do it as a separate project to go over to NPM to give you a little bit like easier migration path. From 14 to the next LTS, we will probably have a little bit similar thing between the bootstrapping of the initial page from 14 to that one. So for example, like in Vaadin 14, you get when a user comes in, the initial payload is basically a blank page that asks to load more data from Vaadin. But now with like offline capable and client capable, we are able to actually send content from the get-go to the client, so it loads faster. And for that, we have renewed the bootstrapping. But then again, you can just turn on the old bootstrapping for a moment, so to make the migration easier. And then when you have done that, then move one step forward.
Yeah, if you take into consideration the Bower to NPM change that we have between Vaadin 10 and Vaadin 14, I would say that the migration from Vaadin 14 to Vaadin 22 is even smaller than in the past, because if you happen to have some Polymer templates that you have been using, Polymer is not the default tool and not required tool in Vaadin 22, but you can still have that as a dependency. So you can keep using those still in Vaadin 22 LTS for the next 15 years if you want. So they are deprecated Polymer templates in the next LTS, but you can use those.
Yes. All right.
Yes.
Let's start looking a little bit on what we are building.
Yeah, let's go through quickly, like streams, stream by stream. So streams are something that we have in Vaadin R&D to kind of categorize our development efforts, and basically they are bound to our product. So flow stream is one of our most essential themes, and it's taking care of the Java-based framework and basically all the build tooling and such in addition. We have recently finished lit template support because we want to get to the next LTS, and we have also just finished OSGI support for NPM. So we actually dropped the support for OSGI in Vaadin 14, or you could use Vaadin 14 with OSGI, but you would be using still this old Bower build. So all the new components can't be used with Vaadin 14 and OSGI in any reasonable way. But now with Vaadin 19, you can go with OSGI again. Then we are currently actually just about to finish the Cradle plugin integration. So in the future, we will be cutting a new version of our Cradle plugin on each platform release. So whenever we get a new Vaadin, we will get a new Cradle plugin as well, and we will run integration tests for it. And if you face an issue in Vaadin Cradle plugin and you have our support package, we are basically forced to get it fixed if you prioritize the bug. Then we are going to be backporting some of the lazy data binding changes that we recently did for Vaadin 17 or 18. I don't remember anymore. But we are going to backport those still to Vaadin 14 series. So if you are on Vaadin 14, you will still get some newer features there as well. And later in the spring and in the beginning of the summer, we will be focusing on Spring integration. So we will be implementing a long-awaited root scope for Spring integration, and then we will probably be looking into having some kind of an official Spring security integration available as well. And then focusing on forms as well. So we have data binding for crits and forms, and then we have data binding for or crits and combo boxes and selects and so on, where we basically list a table of your database, and then we have data binding of one entity to a form, then this is what we will be revamping in the future. Not sure if it's going to be in the next LTS or not. Then let's have a brief overview for the design system. So basically, the design system stream is taking care of all the components, themes, and so on. And recently, this was actually done by the Flow team, but it belongs to the design system. So there was improved theming support. So the theming is much more easier to do, and you can much more easily reuse your theme that you build for one application. You can then package that as a jar file and then use it in all your Vaadin applications. Then we have Figma library for designing. Oh, go ahead, Jens.
Yeah, I was just gonna say about this theming support. I've been so happy of having that around that you can now it's in a more simple way again define your theme, that you have a theme folder, and then you have a styles.css file where you can list your things. And even if you want to do custom theming for components, you can just place it in like name a CSS file with the name of the component, and it will be automatically picked up and apply the styling for it. So especially in Vaadin 10, we had a lot of this like do CSS in JavaScript files and such, and now we have gone back to something that reminds me a lot about Vaadin 8, for example, where you had your theme and CSS files in it. So I have enjoyed a lot with it when I've been coding with Vaadin 19 and Vaadin 20 lately.
Yeah, and it was also actually very important step towards like proper design system support. And related to that, we are now building a design system publisher, which is basically creating documentation for your components and how you should be using those in your company's applications. And that will be available for our Prime customers in the future. And then we have project to depolymerize our components, and APIs, and improve the accessibility, which I mentioned already, new components. And next, we will be focusing on long-awaited performance improvements for grid. So the latest grid that we have is actually not as performant as it was in Vaadin 8. So we are going to make some improvements, and probably we are going to implement like a horizontal virtual scrolling. So virtual scrolling, if you have like dozens of columns, then it will scale to that direction as well, much better than it used to be. We have been talking with our customers about spreadsheet support. Actually, not just one, but several customers, and maybe if we get that sponsored, then we might actually start working on that very, very soon. And then on the later part there, we have improved dashboard and also migration helpers. So migration helpers means basically having Vaadin 8 kind of components on the Java side, on the Java API, have those available in your Vaadin 14 or Vaadin 22 applications. So basically you have exactly the same API for your most common components as you had in the Vaadin 8. So nowadays we do have the vertical layout and horizontal layout and let's say button, but the API in those is slightly different than it used to be. And we are kind of planning to make the migration from the Vaadin 8 applications that are running out of the free support around next year this time. We are planning to make that kind of easier for our customers.
Yeah, it's worth mentioning about the later part in especially the design system, that it's maybe the most fluffy part of our roadmap right now. So we are looking into what are the things that we should build. We have a lot of different ideas on we could do that, we could do this. The two listed here in later are some ideas, but we have to talk with you, the developers using Vaadin and the businesses using Vaadin, to decide which ones are the actually ones that we want to build at that moment.
Design system stream is our largest stream, and we have most developer resources there and most requests as well. So also the plans are changing the most on that part.
Yeah. There was also one question coming in that we can maybe take because it's directly about this. Which version is the teaming support coming into? I know that it's at least in Vaadin 19 already.
Yeah, that's ready and released, and we are actually just backporting it, or I think we actually did backport it already, but it's not released. So I think if you take Vaadin 14.6 alpha something, then you probably have the improved teaming support in the LTS series as well. But of course, it's a pre-release, but that's coming pretty soon for the LTS series as well.
Yeah. Actually, 14.6.0 Alpha 2 was released today, and that one includes the teaming support already. So you can start using it today.
Good.
All right, I have been talking a lot. Shall you continue, Jens? From here, I can start to monitor the questions instead.
Yes, I will continue. The next thing that we're gonna discuss about is Fusion, the other framework in Vaadin. And as said, this is for building UIs with TypeScript. And we have been adding Fusion into the product already since Vaadin 15. So 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. And I would say myself already that this is quite production-ready code. There is already a lot of the features that you need. Each major version, they are production-ready, even if they are not long-term supported. So by giving 4 months of support and releasing a new version every 3 months, we keep the opportunity that if we find new information from what we have shown to you, the customers, that something should be different, we can change the APIs along the way. But that doesn't mean that we can push out something that is half-baked or not ready. We are always doing one feature complete before moving on to the next one. So, and I think the whole Fusion set starts to be in a shape so that you can very effectively build full applications with it. Recently in Fusion, we have finished the UI state management, that you can have a state in your UI codes and views. And what we are working right now is to get documentation of Fusion to top notch, so that you would have a reference for how do I do this and how do I do that to be able to effectively build those applications. You might also have noticed our new docs site at vaadin.com. It's actually our design system that we referenced earlier. And in the docs site, there is listed all our components with Java code and TypeScript code as well. So you can see there the best practices on components, how to use it. And we are in the process to add all the component code in TypeScript. We have had them on the component site earlier in JavaScript, but we are now going with the stack that you would use in Fusion. So you basically choose there, do I use Flow or do I use Fusion? And based on that, you get the language that is appropriate for it.
And what I'm very excited about is that we're going back to kind of the stuff that we had back in like Vaadin 7 times, when you in the sampler you could just copy paste the snippet of code from those demos and paste it into your app and it would work. And that's something you can do again with the new doc site, which I think is really cool. So you see some pattern there that looks good. You want to have that in your app, you can copy the code there and put it in your app and get it working. That's super exciting to me. It makes playing around with new components and features super effortless.
Yeah, that's very true. After we have got this like documentation and component examples in place, we're going to move on to give some additional features still. We're planning on making it possible to do fully stateless applications with Fusion, so that you can do, for example, scalability more easily with Fusion applications. And we're going to figure out more exactly on how to do unit testing with Fusion applications. Most likely it will be about providing the documentation and examples on how to do it with existing tools there, but we're gonna give you the full experience that and guide you like this is how you should go ahead and test your Fusion application.
Yep.
Later on, we're gonna add support for Lit 2. There's a new version of Lit, but it's forward compatible. So Lit 1 template works directly in Lit 2 as well. So it will not be breaking change as well. And then we're gonna continue and simplifying and improving APIs. So we have now built the features that we see that these are how you would build an application. But the more we get feedback from customers building application actually with Fusion, we learn that how people are doing maybe it in a different way, and some part would require a little bit more API and help us to make it fluent. So we're gonna focus a lot on listening on customers and finding which are the pain points that we could fix still in the product. Connected to Fusion, we also have a very new product internally that we call Studio. And like with Flow, we have tools like Test Bench and Designer. This is a little bit similar for Fusion developers. It's like a visual tool, like Designer for Flow, but taking a little bit different approach than Designer, where Designer is more like low code, where you drag and drop stuff. Here we plan that you would be all the time, you would write your own code all the time. Here you can see a Fusion view, for example, and the moment that you type, you could open up in Visual Studio Code a live view of your application, so that you can instantly see all the changes that you do in your application and fix it along. So you don't have to do that whole edit, save, switch the browser, refresh your browser, see if everything is okay, then go back. But you get instant response to everything that you do. And you can see another feature as well, that you can click on components to highlight the correct place in code for editing. We have a lot of features planned for this as well, or thoughts on what we could want to build here, but we would like to get this feature out first. We're going to have a closed alpha release for it, so the first customer can get along and play with the code, and based on that feedback, we're gonna decide which are the main features that we would like to build out here. Would it then be panels where you can directly choose theme styles for your Vaadin button, or would it then be, for example, more auto-completion capabilities, but something that gives the developer more productivity while building their Fusion application. The next thing on the list, what we already know that we're gonna do is we call it fixtures internally, but we haven't decided exactly what the product name or feature name will be. But the idea is that you can provide to a view mock data. For example, you see a grid here, but it's fully empty because it's waiting data from the backend. But a way that you could inject data on the side of your view application without changing the view code, and see how it actually would look if you would have the data available there, to make it more like a real use case. And one is testing it out and building it, and the other one is also when you are doing testing for your use, that you actually have application, you can mock the backend away to make sure that everything works. But more on that when we get to a state where we are happy with the product and we can publicly release our first version. Then we have a new. We have been working 1 year now, and we have three releases done on it, and the fourth one is around the corner. It's a product called Collaboration Engine, and the idea behind Collaboration Engine is that you can enable your end users of your Vaadin application to collaborate with each other in real time, and you can do this with just a few lines of Java code. So very easy to put there, very easy to get the benefits. And the idea behind this, well, you know, maybe in many of the web application net, you don't really see other users using at the same time. So for example, if you have, let's take, you have a CRM system or similar, you're editing a long form of a customer in there, for example, you spend 20 minutes looking up details and making sure everything is right, and then you're done and you're about to click save, but you don't know that somebody else was actually doing it in the same time when you were doing, and where you didn't have any kind of visibility that anyone else was there. So what would happen then when you actually click to save? There is basically two main scenarios that I can see. The first one is that the backend happily just saves the newest data, even if somebody else has been in between and storing it. And this could be critical data loss because nobody's even know that you have lost data or somebody else has edited data which would be lost during the way. Or then the other option is that you have optimistic locking in your application and the backend notice, hey, somebody else was saving here in between. You should probably refresh your data and start over and do your 20-minute work again. And that is something that you could easily table flip at that moment, that I lost all this work that I did. So we wanted to find some kind of collaboration solution where you can work together instead of against each other when multiple people are using the application. So for example, in this case, you can see avatars in the top right. If you already see that somebody is in the application, it helps you a lot to understand that maybe I should talk with that other person. The other person is looking at the same data as I. Why is that one here? We should probably talk. But this goes a little bit beyond that. You can actually see here that what the other people are editing, and when they have actually edited a field, you would get the same value to your screen as well. So you're editing a shared state of what the binder knows in the application at that moment, and you get the updates live. And you can discuss within the application with the other users on what should happen instead of having to switch over to Slack or email or Teams or call the person. So, these collaboration features have been very revolutionizing in many applications. For example, Google Docs or Google Suite did it and took a big share of Microsoft Office market share, and similarly Figma did it for designers, and Figma is a big tool nowadays that, for example, Vaadin uses internally for all their designs. But about that, what we have recently done is the low-level or the standalone messages component. You can see on the right side in the previous picture, you see a list of messages here, and you see a message input component. So we have recently built those two components and released it to the Vaadin component set. And on top of those, we are providing the discuss features in Collaboration Engine itself, which means that you get a fully functional chat between multiple users in your Vaadin applications with 4 lines of Java code. You don't need anything extra to take care of the data syncing and similar. We are just about to wrap this up and release it to the market, and I'm very excited personally about that part. For the future of Collaboration Engine, we're going to next look at being able to deploy the Collaboration Engine as a standalone server. Today, it's a jar that you put in your project. The downside of being a jar is that if you deploy your application to multiple servers and each server runs their own copy of the Collaboration Engine, the end users will only see users that are on the same server. So it's a good solution if you are deploying on one server, but if you do any kind of scaling or redundancy, then you would have this standalone feature would enable you to use Collaboration Engine in those projects as well. After that, we are looking into Fusion support. This is Flow support only for now, but we are adding Fusion support later as well. And then we're looking into more use cases which we can support, like collaborative rich text editors, which is like Google Docs kind of writing, maybe collaborative grids that many people can edit a grid at the same time, or notifications, so you get a notification to your mobile phone. And that was the main projects that we have right now. I'll put a big slide here next, which has most of the things that we have discussed today. And from here on, let's take in some questions and discuss.
All right. Well, that was a ton of new stuff coming out, and we have many questions coming in. I think one that we need to address early on is Stefan is wondering how come Matti isn't drinking a beer.
Yeah, actually, I'm at home currently. I have spent quite a lot of time during the corona times at my cottage project, and all my beer is there. So rest assured that when I get there during the weekend, I will have my beer.
All right, good. Anyway, let's jump into a more serious question then. I think this I'll pick up this one because I think we've heard this from many people wondering kind of how does Flow and Fusion fit together? Will the TS code, hold on, let me say. So will you keep both Flow and TS in the future, or is the TS client code with Java backend the way you will go? So would you guys like to talk about that a little bit? Kind of explain our vision there?
I guess that comes to me because I'm responsible for the framework part, at least half of it. And yes, we will have 2 frameworks in the future. That's what we already have in the major releases, not in the LTS yet, but soon in the LTS as well. We will have 2 frameworks instead of 1, and they will be there. So the traditional Vaadin where you are using Java for basically everything is not going anywhere. The Fusion story, that framework, it's there to complement like areas where Flow can never go. So as mentioned by Jens earlier in the webinar, for example, offline it's never possible for a framework like Flow. So the design decisions that we have done for the Java framework a long time ago, actually like 20 years ago, they help us to solve many things in very efficient way and in very superior way to many other frameworks. But on the other hand, you will get some limitations. So it provides a strong abstraction, and basically when developing with Flow, you don't need to think about the client-server communication at all. And it's more like developing just a traditional desktop application. With Fusion, you are closer to the metal. You are doing a client-server application. You are doing a browser application. You are programming into the web browser instead of like having like general UI level framework that you have with Flow. In a way, you can think that they go to totally different areas. Like Flow goes to some kind of applications, and Fusion goes to some kind of applications. But in reality, they are also competing a bit inside the company as well. But the current plan is to have both frameworks there. And of course with Flow we have a lot more users currently, and it's the bread and butter for our company. So the future for the Flow is much more secure than the future that we have for Fusion, because that's completely new adventure. So from that we are just like gathering experiences, but we have so much of that already that we are confident enough to put it to the next LTS series. So we will be supporting that as well, at least for the next 15 years.
Yeah, I think that's a good summary. I mean, at the end of the day, both share a lot of the same ideas, same components. Both are specifically built for kind of getting the maximum advantage of running on a Java backend. Obviously, with Flow, that means you can run your entire UI code there on the JVM and kind of have Vaadin automate all the communication, whereas with Flow, like with Fusion, as Matti said, that runs in the client, but we still want to give a lot of those same benefits. So you still have type safety all the way from your backend going into your view as you're building that. We can still help you kind of build forms and share validations across and kind of help kind of build a client-side application in that kind of follows the same ideas that we've had throughout the years. So that there might be cases, like Matti said, it might be the same developer in different projects, or it might be different developers who have different needs. But we've made these 2 frameworks compatible with each other as well. So like Jens mentioned earlier, you might have a case where you just need some offline functionality, so you can have a Flow application with just 1 or 2 Fusion views as well.
Yeah, they kind of share some DNA together. So at like vision level, we still have also for the Fusion part the productivity as the main goal. So we want to make it very efficient to make that kind of client-centric applications as well. And they share the same components. Components is one of the most essential abstractions that we have in Flow, and we basically have the same components for Flow and Fusion. In Flow, you are using the Java API. With Fusion, you will use HTML markup and TypeScript to configure your components. So much of our R&D in Vaadin, it goes in, or I would say most goes into the components, which helps both of these frameworks. As a Vaadin user, you are probably using either Fusion or you are using Flow, but you are still using the same components.
All right. Then we have a couple of questions regarding the Vaadin designer. So Emil here was asking about Ty. Do you have a plan to significantly invest in the designer? It has plenty of room for improvements in light of the new no-code movement. And we also had another question around the designer. Will it support Fusion or not?
Yeah, Jens actually used to be the PO for designer. I'm actually taking care of designer nowadays. Maybe I can answer that. So with the current designer, you can actually build lit templates with the latest versions. So in theory, you can draft a lit template that you can then later on use in Fusion applications. But designer is specifically targeted for Flow usage. So that's the main target. So we haven't looked into it from Fusion users' perspective, but in theory, you can draft some layouts with it. It should work there. But
yeah,
it's just, we actually expect that most of the Fusion code that people will be building is not going to be written in Java IDEs anymore. Visual Studio Code is probably going to be the main tool for those who write Java TypeScript. And that's why the studio that Jens discussed about, that's also going to be published on Visual Studio, not on IntelliJ or Eclipse, at least in the first place.
Yeah,
and
it's all.
Yeah. Go ahead.
It's also worth noting that maybe the users is often different for Flow and Fusion. You can think about yourself also in which group you belong, but many of our Flow users are here because they want that productivity from just writing Java code, and they don't want to touch JS and CSS and all the other like front end things that are there. And many of them want to just like easily throw them together without seeing so much maybe of the underlying code. But then again, Fusion coder, those that would choose Fusion are maybe more those that like to work with the code and with the front-end technologies more directly and have more control. So for that reason, we also see that in the studio case, we're going to put the code front-end center instead of a drag-and-drop tool front-end center. And you would still be working primarily in the code and just seeing what happens and being able to find the correct place in code.
Yeah, and then the other question was about like how much do we invest in designer?
Yeah.
Lately we haven't been investing too much. It has basically been in the maintenance mode. We have just reacted to the most serious issues, and that has been mainly because we have had other focus areas like finishing the Fusion. So we wanted to get the Fusion ready for the next LTS. So that's why we needed to get the resources from somewhere, and that's probably that has kind of already changed. We are actually moved one very experienced designer developer back to designer, so he's taking very good care currently about like smaller issues and even bigger features. So we have already built support for the new theming mechanism. So the one that you have in Vaadin 19. So you that is supported in the. I think it was published already, but if it wasn't, it will be published next week or so. So very, very soon, at least, you can use the new theming system with Designer. and maybe we will push out some new other features as well for the tooling part. I agree that we have kind of oversighted our tooling for Flow developers lately. Previously, we had actually much better plugins for all the IDEs. We had project creators and even some templates, and in NetBeans we actually had even built-in directory support where you could pick up new dependencies to your Vaadin application. And there is a lot of things that we could make better for the Java tooling. And let's see. I think there is currently more critical things to do, which are proposed even in the comment section here today, right now. But at least we are taking more. At least we have more focus now for the designer again than we had, for example, half year ago.
That's good. Let's take a couple of quick ones. So I think Matti already talked about this, kind of touched on it, but there's a question on when will Vaadin 14 meet the portlet specification for use with Liferay or other portals?
I don't remember actually talking about Liferay or portal support in this webinar. I think it was OSGI, and for Liferay users, that's actually slightly related, because many of the Liferay users, they actually expect also OSGI support these days.
Yeah.
And OSGI was kind of a requirement for a proper Liferay support. We actually did a version of our Vaadin Flow portlet plugin in the autumn for one customer as a sponsored quick project, so that you can use already Liferay and Vaadin Flow together. So if you don't need to use OSGI with Liferay 7, you can go ahead and take the Vaadin Liferay plugin, or at least the snapshot version of it, and then deploy your Vaadin applications to Liferay. That's possible. It's not a finished and fully supported product yet, but if you are interested about that, go ahead and talk to your sales guy at Vaadin, and let's see. I think we could collect some of the customers and make some kind of a sponsored project around Liferay support, and now it should be easier for us to also provide that OSGI support in Liferay, which I know that many of our customers have been looking for.
Good. All right. So let's see. We have one kind of. Where's that? Here we go. Frank is asking if you believe there will be any effects on the company philosophy now that there was a change at the top of Vaadin. Has that reflected in any way in kind of the road mapping or resourcing or anything else that kind of you think will be visible to the community at large?
You want to take that, Jens, or shall I?
I can take that one. Yeah, it was big change for us as well, but we are getting into the new mode as well. We had in the product management, we have had more. It has made a change in how we decide also what projects we have done, and I would say it has a lot of the road mapping and views where we are going comes directly from the POs nowadays. So we have a lot more of flexibility also to react more faster on things there. And one big change I would say is that we have after that changed our philosophy a little bit about the new and shiny and making existing to a little bit better. So we have been focusing more on Flow, putting more effort into Flow also after that, and taking extra good care of our existing customer base, and we will continue in filling all the gaps that we can find for our current users within Flow, which I would say is somewhat of a consequence.
Yeah, I would, but as a shorter answer, I would say not a lot. So nothing dramatic has changed.
Yeah, that's true.
So we have slightly maybe moved our focus to our like current audience that we have, and slightly less eagerly focusing on the Fusion side. So we had quite massive plans for Fusion launch, but now it's going to happen in a bit smaller scale. So for example, the tooling, the studio, that we plan to work a lot this year, but now we are moving more resources to the flow side and components and also designer side.
Yeah, we want to make extra good care that there is not much breaking stuff going on or anything, that our existing customer base are really happy with the product.
Good. All right, so we are now 1 hour and 10 minutes in. Let's do 2 quick questions and then wrap up, and we'll of course continue the discussion then on our community chat and other places. But there was one question here from Bern about full duplex support for Flow Connect TS View. So essentially Fusion, like WebSocket support. Any intel? We might need to summon Gilberto in the comment section to to give us some insight there. But Jens, Matti, any comments there on?
Yeah, this has been discussed many times that should we do it for like before we can put Fusion to the LTS or not. So this has been one of those tricky questions. But currently the assumption is that it's not required for the LTS support. We can bring it up later if we see like really important uses for it, but currently it's not that relevant probably for Fusion users as it is for Flow users, for example. With Flow, it's also like to compensate the latency. So if you have WebSocket communication enabled on Flow, it's faster than ever, and it's also like an extra step in the abstraction. So if you enable WebSocket support in Vaadin Flow, the abstraction works actually better because then if you make some UI changes on the server side because of event coming in from another server, everything just happens automatically. And if you don't have that enabled, then it doesn't. So it's kind of more important for Flow than Fusion with our current understanding.
Good. All right, and then let's finish up on a question around route scoping. So Edward here was asking about the Spring route scoping that you mentioned on the roadmap. Can you expand a little bit on what that means and why that's a good thing, I suppose?
For all older Vaadin developers who have been using Spring with Vaadin 7 or 8, I would say that it's basically the same as view scope in older Vaadin versions. And it's exactly the same as route scope in our CDI plugin. So in our CDI plugin, we have had this route scope for a while, and it's basically to replace the old view scope that we had in Vaadin. So it's very essential in bigger applications, and people have been missing it, but there has just been so many things on our table that has been just more essential. But finally, that's coming up, and it's kind of a requirement for better Spring security support as well. So there you might have some roles, for example, that you want to apply only for certain views, which are routes, basically in Vaadin Flow lingo nowadays.
Yeah, excellent. Well, this has been super exciting. Even like within the company, it feels like we're working on so many interesting new things. So just seeing all of them in that one huge slide that Jens put up at the end just really kind of brings it to life how many cool things we have coming out this year. So huge thanks to everyone joining us. There were a lot of questions, unfortunately, that we weren't able to get to here. I would like to invite everyone over to our Discord server, where both Jens and Matti have been actively also discussing with community members on an ongoing basis. So if you have kind of questions like this in the future, that's a really good place to just talk to us, but also talk to other people in the community, come up with new ideas for cool add-ons or something together. So really nice place to hang out with other Vaadiners there. Really big thanks to both Jens and Matti for joining us. Interesting stuff.
Thank you.
And with that, I think we will wrap up this webinar and head on to other stuff. So thanks everyone for joining us, and we'll be back with another webinar in just a couple of weeks. Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.